A monster forms May 31st, 2013. The sun begins to set over the plains of central Oklahoma, painting the horizon in golden gray. It had been a week of unstable weather, the kind of humidity and tension meteorologists learned to fear. But no one could imagine what the atmosphere was about to unleash. At 6:03 p.m., near the small town of El Reno, the first funnel descends from the wall cloud of a rotating supercell. It begins as a narrow rope, twisting, delicate, almost graceful. But in minutes, it widens, and widens again, and again, until the ground below disappears beneath a colossal vortex, nearly 2.6 miles wide, the largest tornado ever recorded on Earth. This is not a typical twister. This is the El Reno tornado of 2013. A storm so immense and violent that it defied the very instruments built to measure it. The perfect conditions. To understand how such a monster forms, we must look not at the tornado itself, but at the forces that feed it. Spring on the Great Plains is a time of collision. Warm, moist air flows north from the Gulf of Mexico, meeting cool, dry air spilling south from Canada and the Rockies. Where these air masses collide, the atmosphere becomes unstable, a powder keg of moisture, temperature, and motion. On that day in May, an unusually powerful jet stream roared overhead, creating massive wind shear, changes in wind direction and speed with altitude. This invisible twisting motion allowed thunderstorms to rotate. That rotation gave birth to a supercell, the rarest and most violent type of thunderstorm on Earth. Supercells are atmospheric engines, capable of producing baseball-sized hail, lightning bolts miles long, and tornadoes that can last for hours. Inside their churning hearts, warm air rises violently, spiraling around a central updraft known as a mesocyclone. And sometimes, when all the ingredients align perfectly, that mesocyclone tightens and drops a tornado. On May 31st, 2013, every condition was perfect. The birth of the beast. As the storm intensified west of Oklahoma City, Doppler radar detected rotation in the lower atmosphere. At 6:03 p.m., storm chasers watching from nearby highways saw a funnel touch down in a field southwest of El Reno. Within 5 minutes, the tornado expanded into a massive multi-vortex circulation, a chaotic whirl of smaller twisters orbiting one another within the larger funnel. Wind speeds exceeded 296 miles per hour, 476 kilometers per hour, making it one of the strongest ever measured. But what made the El Reno tornado truly terrifying was its unpredictable behavior. Unlike most tornadoes, which follow relatively consistent paths, this one shifted direction repeatedly, sometimes widening or contracting by hundreds of meters within seconds. From the air, it was less a funnel and more a swirling wall of chaos, a living, rotating ocean of debris and wind. Inside the vortex. To stand near a tornado of this scale is to stand at the boundary between order and destruction. The El Reno tornado was so large that from close range, its outer edges were invisible. A gray curtain of rain and debris obscured its true size. Even trained storm chasers had no idea what they were driving toward. At times, the tornado's core circulation was enveloped in rain-wrapped vortices, making it nearly impossible to see until it was upon you. Radar analysis later revealed that within the tornado's 2.6-mile diameter were multiple internal vortices, each spinning at hurricane-level intensity. These smaller vortices acted like blades within the greater storm, carving paths of unimaginable force. The energy inside such a system is staggering. At its peak, the El Reno tornado released more power per second than the combined output of every power plant in the United States. The scientists who faced it, among those who chased the El Reno tornado, were some of the world's most experienced researchers. Meteorologist Tim Samaras, along with his son Paul and colleague Carl Young, were part of a scientific effort to study tornado structure from ground level. Their goal, to deploy tornado probes, armored instruments designed to measure wind pressure, humidity, and speed inside the vortex itself. It was a race against nature. The team had faced countless storms before, including the deadly Joplin tornado of 2011. But this one was different. As the El Reno tornado widened, it changed direction unexpectedly, expanding faster than anyone anticipated. Caught off guard, dozens of storm chasers suddenly found themselves in its direct path. Tim Samaras' vehicle was struck. It was thrown hundreds of meters, torn apart by winds exceeding 200 miles per hour. All three men were killed instantly. Their deaths sent shockwaves through the storm-chasing and meteorological community. Samaras was considered one of the safest, most methodical chasers alive, a pioneer who had devoted his career to saving others through science. The El Reno tornado became the first in history to kill professional researchers. The storm chaser's perspective. For those who survived, the experience was unlike anything they had ever seen. Veteran chaser Reed Timmer, who filmed the event from a heavily armored vehicle, later described it as a moving mountain of wind. Visibility dropped to zero. Debris the size of cars flew through the air. Power flashes illuminated the horizon like artillery fire. Some radar readings even showed horizontal vortices, suggesting the storm's base was rotating so violently that parts of the tornado touched the ground at multiple points simultaneously. Even with modern GPS, radar, and vehicles designed for the apocalypse, the storm humbled everyone. It was a reminder that nature does not play by human rules. The aftermath. When the tornado finally dissipated at 6:43 p.m., 40 minutes after it began, it left behind a path nearly 17 miles long and up to 4 kilometers wide. Yet miraculously, much of the area it struck was open farmland. Had the core passed through a densely populated area, the casualties would have been catastrophic. Even so, 8 people died, including the 3 researchers, and 151 were injured. Vehicles were shredded. Asphalt was peeled from roads. Steel beams were twisted like ribbon. Forensic meteorologists later analyzed debris trajectories and found that the tornado had lifted objects more than a mile into the sky and hurled them over 10 miles away. What shocked scientists most was the tornado's chaotic structure. Not a single defined funnel, but a constantly shifting cluster of violent vortices. It forced meteorology to rethink how tornadoes are classified and understood, measuring the unmeasurable. The El Reno tornado posed a unique problem. How do you measure something that destroys the instruments designed to study it? The National Weather Service, NWS, initially rated it EF5, the highest level on the enhanced Fujita scale, based on radar-indicated wind speeds of 296 miles per hour. However, because the tornado didn't strike many structures directly, there was little physical damage evidence to support that rating under standard guidelines. Eventually, it was downgraded to EF3, even though radar data suggested it was far stronger. This sparked debate across the scientific community. Could the Fujita scale, which relies on structural damage rather than direct measurement, truly capture the scale of storms like El Reno? Many experts now argue for new classification methods based on radar and mobile probe data. What makes a tornado so large? Tornado size isn't simply about strength. It's about energy distribution and environmental conditions. In most cases, tornadoes are narrow because their parent storm's rotation is tightly focused. But when the storm's inflow of warm, moist air is vast, and when upper-level winds create broad rotation, the vortex can spread across multiple zones. The El Reno storm had exactly that setup. Wide inflow, extreme shear, and rapid boundary collisions that allowed it to grow horizontally while maintaining violent winds. Essentially, the tornado's engine was so large that instead of one tight funnel, it became a rotating disk of chaos several kilometers wide. Inside this disk, numerous smaller vortices whirled, each capable of producing EF4 level destruction. In simple terms, it wasn't one tornado. It was a family of tornadoes within one body, all feeding the same monstrous core.